Rebuild versus retool. Today's conversation with Locked On Sharks host JD Young may have you thinking differently about Nashville's best path forward for success.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this special Friday crossover episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio. I am usually joined by my partner in crime, Emma Lingen, but on today's crossover episode, I am joined by JD Young. JD is the host of the Locked On Sharks podcast, and he joins us today to talk about rebuilds. If anybody knows what it is like to be in the throes of a good old-fashioned rebuild, it is JD. Today, we are going to talk with him about what a true rebuild looks like, the highs and lows of walking through that process, and whether a retool on the fly really is a recipe for success. Before we dive into all of that with JD, do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Joined now by great friend of the show and host of Locked On Sharks, JD Young. JD, this is an episode that I have wanted to do for months and months. You and I had a conversation a long time ago talking about rebuilds. And I was like, okay, we simply need to get you on and just have the hard conversation for the Locked On Predators fan base about rebuilds. So I appreciate you coming on and just sharing the good, the bad, the ugly, and your take and wisdom on rebuilding versus whatever the vernacular is other people want to use.
Yes.
I love that.
The rebuild versus retool or reload. I like reload. That one's a good one too. But the rebuild is a word that I know it feels like a dirty word, but it's one that we should embrace more as teams and stuff, because I always say you don't want to be a creamy middle team, a team that is just kind of stuck in purgatory. And at least if you're rebuilding, you have a direction. So that's at least my 2 cents to start with rebuilds. But
yeah, it is the new F word in sports, rebuild. It's the new F word. Before we get to the specifics and we kind of dive into some statistics about rebuilds and talking about the nitty gritty of it, I do want to pivot real quick and talk about the NHL draft. You were at the draft this season, this year, not your first rodeo. Wanted to ask you a couple questions. First of all, how PO were you with the draft lottery when you didn't get the first overall pick?
I was a little disappointed, but not like last year, like with the Sharks. If the Sharks had not gotten the first pick and missed out on Celebrini, like that would have been crushing because of the season, like that 23-24 Sharks team that you went through. Like it was brutal to watch that team night in, night out basis. At least this year, like you had Celebrini, you had Smith, and you knew there was two guys between Michael Misa and Matthew Schaefer, where if you don't get one, you feel like you're getting a good player in either one here. So while it was annoying that the Sharks didn't get the first pick, I am happy for our friend Gil, who the Islanders have been a creamy middle team forever. They're well on their way in their rebuild, retool, whatever they're going to call it. So yes, it would have been nice to have Schaefer. And I know the Sharks, if the Sharks had got number one, they would have 100% picked Matthew Schaefer, because that's kind of the last piece, is a potential top pairing defenseman who can do the things that Matthew Schaefer can. But getting Michael Misa is a really nice consolation prize.
Yeah. I bet you slept okay at night with Michael Misa.
I did.
That's not terrible. Not terrible. Where do you see him, like what timeline wise, where do you see Misa getting into the lineup? Just curious from a perspective of a team that drafted 5th overall, and there is talk that maybe this 5th overall pick could battle for a spot. I'm curious, what's that going to look like in San Jose with Misa?
I think the Sharks are going to give him every opportunity opportunity to win a spot in the lineup, right? And this season, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if they took the Will Smith approach with Misa. And there was a lot of, almost like anger of the way the Sharks handled Will Smith last season, where they were very careful, especially the first half of the season. Like, he didn't play back-to-back games. They gave him development days where he was just spent on the ice or in the gym and trying to continually focus on getting his body to be an NHL body. And a lot of people are like, what are you doing with this kid, right? Second half of the season, Will Smith had an excellent second half of the season and showed why he's a future cornerstone piece of this franchise. I wouldn't be surprised if the Sharks do it again with Misa, where you give him kind of limited third line minutes to beginning, you give him some time on the power play, and then once the second half of the season gets going, you take the training wheels off and let this kid go. Because even compared to Will Smith, like, Misa's a much cleaner prospect, a guy who's good in all three zones. I mean, a lot of the comps are basically a Celebrini Jr. type of player, and I don't think Michael Misa's built the same way that Celebrini is, at least when it comes to like a body and a physique and stuff, where Celebrini showed like, I can take a full season. And even at the end of the season, Celebrini wore down a little bit, but I do think Misa is a guy that they're going to give a chance, but it'll be interesting to see, because he's way too good to go back to the OHL. Or maybe they send him to college for a season and let him go to Penn State and play with his brother Luke, or maybe could you imagine Misa McKinnon on a top line there? Just ridiculous. Or maybe he goes to one of the Boston schools, or wherever. I could potentially see that as well. So
I am so here for the Penn State, the Penn State thing. I'm a Penn State girl. Like, I am a huge fan of Aiden Fink. One of the prospects for the Nashville Predators goes to Penn State, and he is killing it. And I'm
Reese
like,
LeBach, baby, 7th round San Jose native.
Let's go. Yes. I love, we're not going to talk about the Penn State program. Just know that I could. I did want to ask you, like I said, you were there at the draft. Of course, you have spent a lot of time looking at the prospects and all of that kind of stuff. Were you surprised by Nashville's pick at 5 overall with Brady Martin? What did you think about that pick?
A little bit, especially when you look at some of the other potential names there. And I think you look at James Higgins, who, went a couple picks later, and Higgins, who was projected to be the number one pick going into this year's draft, right? And kind of got picked apart, especially when you compare him, how he did compared to like Will Smith, who played the exact same role. And it's not like Higgins had some horrible season, right? He was still a point per game player as a freshman in the NCAA on one of the best teams in the country. But like, there was just some kind of questions to it. But I do think, though, with Higgins, of just the way he plays the game and what his floor/ceiling could be, I think he would have been my choice there. I get the Brady Martin thing, especially with, you see the way the Florida Panthers are playing, right, with this almost bully ball type of hockey, where it's like, we're going to be really good, but we're also going to beat the crap out of you. And I think Brady Martin does fit that. And right, we see this all the time, where as teams start to do things well and start to win championships a certain way, then everyone kind of goes there. And then now what's going to be the zag, right? As everyone's going towards, we're going to play bully ball hockey. What's going to be the zag to that, and how are people going to counteract that? Will be interesting. But yeah, I get it with Brady Martin. I think his floor is really high. I just think when you're picking this like top 5, you go for the guy with the highest ceiling. And I don't know if Brady Martin has a higher ceiling than James Higgins, but that's just me. As I've said on my show a million times, I'm an idiot, so who knows?
Okay, I don't think you're that bad. I don't think you're that bad. So speak life, JD. Speak life.
Yes.
Yeah. Coming up, we are going to talk some more about youth, because when it comes to a rebuild, youth matters. I'm going to put JD on the hot spot. We're going to talk about how successful rebuilds really are. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. We have all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you have been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endless scrolling, trying to find that best deal? Well, Game Time's zone deals are going to pick the best seats in your section for you. And if you wonder what your view will actually look like before you buy, the app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there are no surprises. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, JD had a great article published in the Daily Face-Off just last week that took kind of an analytical view on rebuilds, not retools, not reloads, not reset on the flies, actual rebuilds. And it kind of looked over the last 30 years in the NHL. So just this framework for this analytical look at rebuilds. According to this article, a rebuild starts or should start after a team has 2 bottom 10 finishes, including a bottom 8 finish in a 3-year period. And they say that a rebuild ends when a team makes the playoffs in consecutive years or wins a Stanley Cup in their return to the postseason. So I'm just going to ask you the $1 million question right off the bat. Do you believe that all teams that finish at the bottom of the league in consecutive seasons have to do a full rebuild to get back to contention?
Yes. Because I think what you're doing is you're honestly delaying the inevitable is what's happening there. And then you're basically just wasting time and wasting seasons there. So if you're the asterisk is like injury exclusion. Like if your star player gets hurt and misses like an entire season and that causes you for, if it's just like, this team is just no longer good, right? And as a Sharks fan, we heard we kind of went this for the 3 years after the 2018-2019 season, where the Sharks made it to the Western Conference Finals. They lose to the Blues because the Blues decided to just headshot their way to a cup victory. I can say that on this podcast. Sure can. Anyway, but and then after that, like we heard from the then GM Doug Wilson, I believe in the bones of this work. I'm sure you probably heard these same sentiments. I believe in the bones. We just got to work around the edges. I believe in this group, et cetera, et cetera. But you're losing some of these pieces that were part of your core, right? Maybe the guys age out, guys go elsewhere, whatever it is. And then you're just left with nothing except for a few guys left over from there. And a team that has been kind of picking in the middle, between 10 and 20 or whatever. And maybe you make it back to the playoffs and maybe you don't, or you feel like you're directionless. And I would rather not waste that time. You're just delaying the inevitable, because if you look at how teams have been built, especially very successful teams as of late, a lot of it is getting these high-end picks and building your core around that, right? Look at the Panthers. Aaron Ekblad, first overall pick, right? Matthew Tkachuk, who they didn't pick, but they drafted Jonathan Huberdeau, who was a very high pick, and made a very gutsy decision to trade Huberdeau for Tkachuk, and seems to have worked out really well for them. Look at Colorado, right? A team that has basically been in it for the past couple of seasons, built on very high-end picks. You have to get lucky. Getting Kyle McCart number 4, pretty lucky. But yeah, Nathan McKinnon. Like, you look at the way that these teams are built, it's by drafting and developing your own core players, right? And there's 3 major ways to get players, right? You can sign them in free agency. They're usually 27, 28, somewhere around there. You can trade for them, or you have to give up assets. Or you can draft and develop them, and you get them from the age of 18 on. Yeah. What seems like the most, something we talk about on Locked On Sharks, the best way to path to sustainable success, right? You don't want to be that flash in the pan team like the Kraken a couple years ago, right? You make the playoffs in your second year, you get to the second round, and then what have they done since then? Yeah. They've been a team that has been struggling. Pretty bad. Struggling, right? Struggling. And my feeling is, if you're going to be bad, you might as well be bad for a purpose and try to get yourself the best possible assets as you can and work towards a rebuild. And it is not an easy life. It is definitely not an easy life to live, but you're hoping like that you get all these pieces and you start to see them to develop, and then you start to put other pieces around them, and that you start to see success one day. But yeah, it is not an easy life to live, especially when you have to watch a team 82 games, soon to be 84 games a year,
Come on.
as they win 20 games a season. So
Yeah. It's so interesting as you lay this out, because we hear this argument a lot from some of the Nashville Predators fan base, but it is very different than the conversation that Barry Trotz has and the vision Barry Trotz has. And he talks about, the bones are good. We've got our core that still have some good years left, defensively, Roman Josi, offensively, Philip Forsberg, in net, UC Saros. And we need to add some pieces around it, which they did last offseason. Ask me how that went, JD. I dare you to ask me how that went. Like, let me tell you, the only thing less fun than watching a team that's supposed to be bad is watching a team that's supposed to be good be really bad. It was rough. But it's interesting as you talk about it, because Barry Trotz is very much we talk about it here at Locked On Predators. He is looking at the now and not yet. And he believes that with the core that he has, he can add the pieces around the bones to make this team competitive while not costing anything in the future with some of the youth. And it is a very precarious spot that the Nashville Predators are in. And I think a lot of the fan base is at a point where they say it's time to start fresh. Now, contractually, that's not always easy for a team to do.
tough.
So how did the Sharks do it? Like, what did you do? Like, did you just ship everybody off and clean the slate? I mean, is that really what you do?
Mike Greer shipped off everybody that wasn't bolted down. It really kind of started right when he got there was Brent Burns, right? I mean, Brent Burns, a legitimate, like one of the best players who ever wear teal. First thing he did was he traded him to the Carolina Panthers. Not much of a return there, but Brent Burns had a 3-team no trade clause, or so he could choose his destination, etc. Then you look at Timo Meier. Your best player who is kind of entering that, like, okay, we just got finished with a bridge deal. He needs to get a massive contract here. Mike Greer later sent him off to first round pick, second round pick, Shakir Mukhamadullin, Fabian Zetterlund, some other stuff, right? You'll get Tomas Hertl, beloved. I will, other than like Joe Thornton and Joe Pavelski and like guys like that, Tomas Hertl, one of the most beloved players in Sharks history, right? You sent him to the hated rival Vegas Golden Knights that nobody knew about. It was literally like 2 seconds before the trade deadline. Anything that was, Mark-Edward Vlasic, who played 19 seasons with the team. This team, which was, $20 million on the cap floor. He's buy him out this year. Like, we need the roster spot more than we need Vlasic's $7 million contract. Logan Couture, who has they had to, basically old yellow him in the back. So that way he can't get back on the ice anymore. It is the first rule of a rebuild is do not get attached to a player, because they're most likely going to be gone. I mean, you look at it right now, the Sharks' longest tenured forward is William Eklund, who's about to start his third year in the NHL. Mario Ferraro is the longest tenured player, and he's about to start his 7th year, and he probably does not see the end of the season with the Sharks. Like, it is like, Mike, you have to be cold and calculated, and he's done a very good job of that. Even like fan favorites, Fabian Zetterlund, who the Sharks acquired in the Timo Meier trade, excellent, like 2 20-goal seasons, got sent him out this off because he didn't fit the timeline of what the Sharks are trying to build. As a guy who's 25, just didn't fit the timeline of what the Sharks are trying to build here. So, it is. There's some painful moments, like doing the Tomas Hertl trade one was brutal, brutal. I just basically 10 minutes of me going, I don't know, man. But you look at what happened, right? The Sharks took those pieces that they got from that trade. Last August, they sent him to Nashville, and now you have your goalie of the future. So you basically traded Tomas Hertl for Yaroslav Askarov, which makes a lot of sense for the Sharks, where you have a guy who's entering his 30s with bad knees in Tomas Hertl, and then you got your goalie of the future in Askarov, who is going to be starting goalie day one this year and should be like a full-time NHLer this year.
Yeah. It's so interesting as you talk about that, because so much of what you're talking about seems very counterculture to the Nashville Predators. The Nashville Predators, just built into the DNA of this franchise, is that honor your history and honor. I don't even know. I'm not sure I'm even explaining it right, but there is this loyalty. There is this I mean, we have a statue of Pekka Rinne, and he's not even dead yet. Like, so
the contract's not even cold yet.
It's not even cold. Yeah. Like, he's still coaching for the team. Like, he still has all the clothes and everything. It's almost like a culture shift that I wonder if Nashville is able to make, because like you said, you have to be unattached. And Nashville is very attached to Roman Josi, to Philip Forsberg, to UC Saros as core players as well. So I think that's interesting. Coming up, we're going to talk about the success of these rebuilds in the NHL, and should Nashville embrace the pain? All right, according to this article, there are only 3 teams in the NHL over the last 30 years that have not fully embraced the we really, really mean it rebuild. One is Vegas. They didn't need to. They cheated. They were fine. Don't even care. Whatever. Another one, Dallas, but they've won a cup. So yay for you, Dallas. And
they are the one team that successively, I think, pulled off the retool of, but they did it because they got players at the end of the first beginning, like second round players who were way better than their draft. They kind of like Carolina, where they look for those guys who like swung for upside, Logan Stankoven and, Maverick Bork, et cetera, et cetera. They are a team that did a very good job of being able to replace his core on the fly, which shows you how rare and how hard it is to do it if they're the only team that's been able to do it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And Barry Trotz talks about Washington. Yeah. Oh, it's a reload on the fly. And I think, okay, there's one example, and maybe it can be done. You talk about Dallas hit really well with their draft picks as well. Nashville has never done a rebuild. That's the third team that has never done a rebuild. And look, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not here for more pain, JD. Emma and I say we aged like presidents last year. I mean, it was excruciating. You talked about, you have to draft and develop. That's like such a key part of a rebuild. Nashville, they have averaged over the last 10 years, they've averaged the 20th overall pick. So when you are in the mushy middle, you don't get an opportunity to draft high and develop well. And I think that is part of the whole Brady Martin discussion. Like, you had a flash in the pan to draft 5th overall, and you didn't go with the sure thing. You went with something else. And I think that will be an interesting thing to follow. I think you're going to Higgins, Martone, and Brady Martin, you're going to be comparing them for the next 5-10 years to see, okay, how right was Barry Trotz and the development team, how wrong. But my question for you is, how do you know if you can develop your players in a rebuild? How do you know?
That's the $1 billion question, right? Is like is it development? Because it's not like there's a formula like, hey, this guy needs to do this guy needs to do this, and that's the development. Because every player is different, right? And every player has their own development path, and every player is going to have their own peaks and valleys and plateaus and everything that they do, right? And guys that you think you feel like you did everything right still don't work out, right? That's if
we know that
draft,
yep
we know that, right? Because like, so if the draft was an exact science, everybody would pick right all the time and every player would turn out right. But I think though, it's just trying to have the best possible plan. I do think the Sharks have done a really good job of investing in this, right? And especially if you look at kind of the Doug Wilson era, and the Doug Wilson era followed a lot of the same stuff Nashville did, of like, we're gonna be loyal to our guys, et cetera, et cetera. and now that they've moved out of that, they've still done a good job of kind of bringing back, like Patrick Marlowe works for the team and the development, Mark Ricci, Joe Thornton, who unofficially doesn't work for the team, but he shows up every day anyway. But like having these guys around some of these younger players and working with them. I mean, Will Smith lived with the Marlows last year. Macklin Celebrini lived with the Thorntons last year. Just having them around there to try to at least put them in the best possible position to succeed is there's all you can do, right? And that's the problem with it. It's just like, because you can do everything right, or at least you think everything right, and players just still don't end up being what you think they're going to be, unfortunately. But I think though, like what my kind of big thing with rebuild is, you have to kind of enjoy those little successes, right? And seeing those little growths and development. Like Will Smith's a great story, right? Who, again, started this season last year. Like he struggled, especially beginning of the year. Like he didn't score his first goal until, 10 games into the season or whatever it was like that. Was in and out of the lineup for developmental reasons. But then this game against Boston on January 20th, where everything just clicked for him. And then from there, he was just a different player, right? And, Macklin Celebrini, who's, again, 1 in a million type of player. Just you see the growth and development from Celebrini, and just like these little shit. I always would call it like the Celebrini thing of the night, where he just does something on the ice that nobody else on the ice can do that night, and stuff like that. And you look at your growth and development and see how these guys start to make an impact, and these little flashes. That's where I think you count growth, especially on a rebuilding team. It's just like those little plays that you're like, okay, this is what we're building on, and what this is when these guys start to do this regular and more, and start to kind of take over shifts, right? And it kind of, this one game against the Wild at the end of the season, where Celebrini had 5 points, including a hat trick, and Will Smith had 4 points. Like just this game where it was just like, that's the game you point to as a Sharks fans, like. That's what's going to, like, when everything's clicking, that's what we're looking for. And that's what's going to start to happen on a more regular basis with these two players. So, but yeah, I mean, you can do everything you think is for the best interest of the player and the team, and it still won't work out. Now, that's what makes it so terrifying. But
it is.
It's
because
very terrible. But
even a
reward
rebuild is not a sure thing. And I think that's something that we have to admit. It may be the long-term, more reliable, statistically results-oriented path, but it's not a sure thing either.
No.
Which is terrible.
Yeah, that's the worst thing. It's like I could be going through this full thing, and then you're like, you just point to the Sabres, right? A team that has been in a rebuild for 15 plus seasons, and they just can't get it right because, okay, we drafted a bunch of defensemen. They're all good. Now our forwards have kind of aged out, and we don't really have like a star forward. Okay. Now, like, it's everything. There's so much that has to go right for it. Right. And everybody kind of has to all come together at the right time here. And I mean, the Sabres are a perfect example of a team that, has had as many assets as you'd want, right? Multiple first overall picks, a ton of top 10 picks, and, and they just can't get it right for whatever reason there is. But on the counterpoint, right, a team like Colorado, a team like, the Panthers, a team, the Lightning, like you could point to a bunch of teams where it all worked out for you and they were able to do it. So that's the hope, is that your team can figure things out at some point. But yeah, it's a long process, but the hope is you're trying to build towards that sustainable success, and just not be that mushy middle team you're happy to make the playoffs every once in a while, and you're picking 13th every year, and you're just kind of stuck in the mud.
You're 8th runner-up at the NHL Miss Universe. Nobody really cares. Nobody cares. You were there. Nobody cares. Yeah.
It's sweet. I got crushed by the Golden Knights in round 1 of the playoffs. Great.
Yeah. Whoa.
Whoa.
Feels so great. How far away do you think the Sharks, like, where are they when it comes to your team in the rebuild? Because like you mentioned, Florida went through like a 20-year rebuild. Now, turning out pretty darn good for Florida, but it's not linear. A rebuild is also not necessarily linear, but for the Sharks, where are you And where do you see them being the team that you can say, look, we're out of the rebuild and we are in the contention window?
I think this is the year where we start to see more on ice success, right? And again, my like hope is that this team kind of makes like a Ducks like jump this year, where you're not picking in the top 3, and maybe you're picking like 7th or 8th, which would be a huge jump for this team that has been the worst team in the NHL the past 2 seasons, right?
Well,
but that's kind of
to beat you out, but we just couldn't quite get there. Sorry.
You have to be really bad to be that bad. So again, not for the faint of heart. But that's my hope for this team. And Mike Greer said it himself. Like, this is now we're exiting the rebuild, or we're starting to become like build. And the Sharks have done a great job of clearing their cap space. Like, if you look at their cap pay, like they have one player signed in the 2008 or 28-29 season. That's William Eklund's extension that doesn't even kick in until next year. And yes, Celebrini and Will Smith, all these guys will get contracts, but like they've done a good job of kind of going through the pains of cleaning up your cap, right? And they've acquired all these assets and have arguably, I would argue, the best prospect pool in the NHL. Now it's starting to see this thing come to fruition. So my hope, my expectation is that they're just not the worst team in the NHL, and they enter what I call the fun and frisky phase, where you're making teams kind of sweat it a little bit more night in, night out, and that's the hope. And they made some good signings, I think, short-term signings, especially to kind of help the defense, which was abysmal last year. You're hoping Askarov kind of makes that's big step that you went out and traded for him and gave him all those assets to be your guy, and the expectation that he can do that this year. Celebrini and Will Smith in year 2. Michael Misa makes the team, as Sam Dickinson, who was the 11th overall pick last year's draft, makes the team. Like, you start to see these things build. And I think for the Sharks, the realistic expectation is like that 28-29 season is like, you should be a playoff team by then. And then the start of the 2030s is like, okay, this team is not messing around. Like, this is the team of the 30s. Like that's the hope, is that you went through this whole, rebuild in the 20s, so that way you can be the team of the 30s and be that next Colorado or be that next Lightning or whoever you want to, where no matter what, like, this team is going to be in it. And if everything breaks your way, maybe you can win a Stanley Cup. And that's the hope.
How much of embracing a rebuild do you think falls on ownership being okay with it? Because
100%.
money is a factor. Like, money is a factor, and selling tickets and getting people there to watch a team that is mushy middle is gonna sell more tickets than watching a team that's in an actual rebuild. How much of that weighs in?
I mean, yeah, 100%. The ownership has to be on it. And I think Mike Greer sold that, like, basically that, like, yeah, we can, be a mushy middle team that we've been the past couple seasons, right? And, maybe we make the playoffs and maybe don't. But again, do you want to be that next Lightning team? Do you want to be that next Avs team? Do you want to be that next Panthers team? And a team that is you're going to have some losses now. But if we nail this thing or get anywhere close to it, you're going to see that revenue make up for itself. But yeah, 100%, like, ownership has to be on it, because I mean, some of the moves Mike Greer, I think most of the moves Mike Greer has made have been positive, in one way or another. But like, again, you traded homegrown talents in Timo Meier and Tomas Hertl, and like these guys who are beloved, sells you a bunch of jerseys for the hope that we can maybe land a top pick in Macklin Celebrini or a guy like Will Smith or whomever. Like, there's a lot of you have to have a lot of kind of like be an owner willing to make that leap of faith with you.
Yeah. Nashville is embracing a new majority owner in Bill Haslam. So it's going to be very interesting to see where he weighs in with Barry Trotz's vision and how patient he's going to be with this, like, retool on the fly that we're talking about now, and how that's all going to play out here in Nashville. Because, on ice is one thing, draft is one thing, financial considerations ain't nothing neither for something like this. JD, I want to thank you so much for hopping on and talking about the ins and outs, the ups and downs, the big picture, and the pain of a rebuild.
Oh, it
for us.
Sucks, dude. But like on a night to night, like, oh cool, the Sharks lost 10-2. Like there's literally like a game where the Sharks lost 10-1 one night, and then the next night they turn around and lost 10-2. And it's like, I gotta come on this podcast and talk about this game. Great.
Yes.
This is gonna be great. So
let me tell you
yeah.
again, I don't want to compare pain, but
Yeah.
when you have to come on and be like, hey, Steven Stamkos and the Nashville Predators can't make the playoffs, we feel like there's pain up and down. No matter how you do it, it's just going to be painful.
It's
But let's see.
there's plenty of horrible as from a content creator perspective, which is the most important part about this, right? Is not the team success, none of that. It's just us, and right, we're the most important people in this.
What does this do for us?
What does this do for me? Yes, having to talk about another 7-1 loss to the Oilers. Great, cannot wait.
Gonna be so fun. Well, look, you can count on the Nashville Predators for keeping games interesting with the San Jose Sharks, and you're welcome for that. We'll see what happens. No idea what's going to happen here this season. So, and I will tell you this, Emma and I do talk about the fact that like the Sharks are like they're like the trashy novel you don't want other people to know you're reading, but you're really into it. That's the San Jose Sharks for us. Like total guilty
They're
pleasure.
the most fun, worst team in the NHL that you've ever seen. They are.
I
will say, the vibes way better than what's going on in Chicago. So that's all that matters. The vibes are immaculate.
There's a reason I invited you and not Jack. So
poor Jack.
Poor Jack. Hashtag
he's just like, it's
Jack.
Terrible.
Yeah, it's just no good. For our listeners who may want to jump on the San Jose Sharks bandwagon, will you let everybody know where they can find you and they can find the podcast?
Of course, you can listen wherever you're listening to this. Also watch on YouTube as well. Plenty of great stuff over there at Locked On Sharks. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at MyFryHole.
We're going to have to talk about that Twitter handle one day, but we'll save that for your next crossover visit. Appreciate it. Thanks, JD.